This story began deep in the night. The girl sat in her room and covered her body because her sweater was too small. Then all of a sudden some guys showed up. They were in uniform and were expecting to see her. After taking a closer look, one of them said it was a witch's curse. Eris turned into a woman because of that old witch. All the guys were shocked. The girl didn't know what they were talking about. She told them that she had always been a woman, and then threw her bag at them. "It's not the curse, you idiots." That's what she wanted to tell them, but she couldn't. Theseus's family of aristocrats decided to adopt her distant relative and force her to wear men's clothes, in order for the girl to join the Order of the Royal Vine under the patronage of their only son. When she was living on the street and eating meat she had gotten herself, a guy came up to her and asked her if she wanted to get out of there. If she serves his order for 3 years, he will help her get out into the people. He gave her his hand and asked her what she would choose. The girl asked if he wanted her to be a knight for just some miserable 3 years. But then at some time she agreed and became a knight, hiding her true origin about being a woman. Once when they were hunting, she and her partner were attacked by a wolf, and she protected him by cutting off his head. The guy said that Aris saved him. The protagonist of this story is Aristida Theseus disguised as a man. She asked if he really wanted to embarrass himself in front of the world with his fighting skills, and I asked him to pull himself together and keep his nose clean. The girl would never even think that the order would be filled with such useless idiots who couldn't handle anything. Then suddenly the head of the royal vine, Albion Pioneer, turned to Eris and told her to be careful because witches dwell there. At that moment she thought it was a good thing she at least had Albion on her team, and they ran together. Suddenly something stopped them and a strong wind blew on them. The girl asked, "What's going on?" But at that moment, a snake jumped on her. It quickly grabbed her head so that she couldn't even move. Then suddenly a witch's voice was heard, asking how they would catch up with her if they were so slow. Eris, kill at the snake, thought she was playing with them. But she'll get to the witch yet. Don't let that one get too excited. By that time the girl witch had come running to the other warriors. When they saw her, they were very frightened. The witch told them to move out of the way, and at that moment she pulled out some kind of bottle to use. Eris, time ran after her, and when she saw the witch trying to do something, she pounced on her partner and pushed him back. Seeing all this, the witch asked in a whisper, "You're a woman, aren't you?" Eris couldn't understand how the witch knew that. But the woman said she had just said it, but apparently it was true. She then opened the bottle and said that despite this, the girl should be punished. After that, the bright smell of flowers came running to Eris. But then suddenly she realized that she couldn't move. At this point the witch said she was a naive knight and cursed her. When she poured the contents of the bottle over Eris's head, she said she would lose something important to her. After that, the girl lost consciousness, and the witch started running away. Albion ran up to her and tried to wake her up. At that moment, the girl dreamed that she was running away from a pack of wolves, but she accidentally stumbles and they run straight at her. The girl thought at that moment that she was about to be killed, but she was saved by a knight on horseback. After that, Eris opened her eyes with difficulty. When her close friend in the order, Ilan Lumet, saw this, he asked how she was and if she recognized him. Looking at him, the girl asked who he was. Ilan said fearfully that she had lost her memory after all. Eris replied that she was joking and asked if he was scared. The guy hugged her and said that of course he was scared. Eris asked him to get off because at this rate he would strangle her. After pushing Ilan away with difficulty, she asked, "Where is the witch and what about her?" The boy replied that she had run away. Albion, who went into the room, said they tried to catch up with her when the girl passed out, but her trail was lost in the woods. They had to retreat because there were too many wounded. Eris asked if they would now have to move out at dawn. Albion then said that their mission was over. He explained that their people were too depressed to look for clues, and there was no guarantee that the witch wouldn't summon another monster. Eris said stupidly, "Since when did they think about their moods?" Albion put the girl back down and said that he didn't mean to tell her this, but everyone was really freaked out when they saw her unconscious. He doesn't blame her for this, but many believe that she will be the one who can defeat all the monsters. Eris said it wasn't her fault, but still, she was perfectly fine now and could defend. But at that moment, Albion sat her down again and told her to listen to him. Ilan asked that Eris listen to him at last. Afterward, the guy said the witch cursed him and asked if Eris was sure everything was okay. Eris said that I seemed to be fine with her, and at that moment she remembered that the witch had already spilled some kind of potion on her. Ilan said they brought him to the local doctor after the retreat, but he refused to touch him when he heard about the curse. And no one wanted to even lay a finger on him, which is why he's here in the closet and not in his room. Then Eris realized why she was wearing the same clothes. That made her very happy, and she said it was okay, and he was used to sleeping on a cold floor. She also thanked Ilan for carrying her. Ilan said Albion had helped carry him, so he'd better let him thank him, and asked if Eris was sure he was all right. The girl replied that she was fine. Then the guy asked if she was sure if she could move her arms and legs, and if she could breathe. Eris asked what was wrong with him. He said he was fine. Ilan said it was just that his voice sounded higher than usual. Maybe he hadn't noticed he'd hurt his throat. The girl thought it was morning now, and the effects of her medicine had already worn off. Eris said he was just tired, and that's why his voice sounded hoarse. But Ilan said he would sound low then. But Eris stood up abruptly and said she had to go take a shower, and thought to herself that it was a good thing she still had her bag with her. She then asked Ilan if he could not let anyone in until he had showered because he was too nervous about what had happened. Guy said he would be very happy to take care of her, and he would do his best to convince everyone that Eris wasn't cursed. After that, the girl went to the shower, and when she undressed, hot water poured over her. She thought it was much better. At that moment, the girl thought about the words of the witch who said she would lose something important. She couldn't figure out what it was. Because her parents are dead, she has no siblings. There's no money either. The girl has only fond memories of the people of her hometown. But these all people are not so dear to her. The man who saved her was Sir Edward. He made her dream of becoming a true knight. What she didn't know was that she'd end up in such a strange order. She figured she needn't worry, because as soon as her mandatory service in the royal order was over, she would ask Marquis to help her get settled in another order and another city. She wants to get into an order that accepts girl knights. She will finally drop her masculine name Aristine and be called Ariel. But before that, she needs to continue to play the role of a man. All she has to do is take a voice-changing drug that the pharmacist prescribed in her hometown. But when she looked in her bag, she couldn't find it. After that, she went through everything, but she still didn't see anything. At that moment, she remembered the words of the witch who said she would lose something important to her, and realized what she meant. Eris thought she already had some left at the bottom of her bag, but just as she started digging around, she accidentally slipped, and when she fell, she screamed violently. Ilan ran to the door and asked if she was all right. Eris coughed and shouted that everything was fine. Ilan said he could hear that it was a voice that didn't sound like his at all. Suddenly other guys came up to him and asked him what was wrong. Ilan explained that he thought something had happened to Eris. When the boys heard this, they were very much surprised, and one of them suggested, "What if the witch is with him now?" Eris heard everything at that moment, but she didn't respond. She thought, what idiots they are. At this point, Ilan told Eris to move away from the door and try to kick it open. The girl asked him to stop and keep the door open, but it was too late and they saw her. Afterward, all the warriors gathered for a discussion. Ilan asked Eris if she thought he had turned into a woman. The girl confirmed this and listened to the whispers. The witch had indeed taken something important from Eris. The curse had turned her into a woman. The warriors spoke. Eris at this point thought the witch had sent some kind of terrifying curse on her. All she had to do was lose her medicine. But the girl thought it was a bit odd, because the witch could have exposed her right there on the spot. Suddenly a guy named Dex suggested they stop by the temple on the way back. If they told them what had happened, they would definitely want to help them. Ilan said it was a very good idea, and Eris thought it was too bad, because she couldn't let anyone know she was really a woman. But then suddenly Albion intervened in the conversation and said that he disagreed, and it was better to keep the situation with Eris a secret. But Ilan couldn't understand why and said they had to get rid of the curse. Then the man explained that everyone here knew very well that all the nobility knew was against Eris of the Theseus family joining the order. But they couldn't do anything about it because of his extraordinary qualities. And how could they after that give them the idea that he was the one who had been cursed? Not only would they make a mockery of the royal vine, but all the warriors would become a mockery to the elites they were so eager to conquer. All the knights were shocked when they heard this. But then suddenly the family's eldest son, Leonhart William, said they already had a bad reputation, so they had nothing to lose now. He didn't understand why they should keep it a secret, so he asked if Aristine himself thought so. At that moment the girl thought that William was only ruining everything, and afterwards said in her feminine voice that it was true, but... And that's when the guy interrupted her and said, "I can't. Just listen to that voice. Maybe you should change your occupation, Aristine. William said he could recommend places that took all sorts of singers. And then he laughed. But at that moment, Eris picked up a vase of flowers and swung it at him. But Ilan and Albion reacted in time to stop her. Albion told him to calm down because he would only make things worse. Then Eris asked if William had forgotten who had saved him, that he hadn't even asked for his help. At this moment, some of the knights began to whisper. I think Eris is in this situation because of William. Do you think Eris did? He helped me too. Talking it over, the guy told them to just pretend none of this happened. That Eris was cursed when he fought on the front lines, so it was their fault too. Yes, and they are responsible for that too. Someone in the crowd shouted that it was a very good idea and they would do it, because they didn't want to be ridiculed and they didn't want to get in trouble. Then one of the knights said that they would protect Eris as he protected them. And before, the girl thought they were all worthless idiots, but they turned out to be pretty good guys. Then Legion said that if they had decided everything, they could go back now, and ordered everyone to disperse. The next morning, when they arrived at the main gate of Castra's capital, Legion said that he would handle the report himself, and that they should go home. Then one of them asked if they didn't have to go to headquarters. Albion said they were entitled to a day off for this mission, so they could split up and rest. The knights were very happy when they heard this and began to disperse. Ilan said they would see each other again. At that moment the girl wondered what she would say to Clement now. But then suddenly, she felt Albion's gaze on her. When she turned around, she asked if he had anything to say to her. Then the guy asked why he didn't want to go back to his hometown. Eris asked him why it was always bothering him. At that moment, the boy moved closer to her, and said that Marquis Theseus has only one son, but this very son is already working for a certain duke. That's why he was adopted by a distant relative, and sent him to the royal vine despite much hype, even though everyone knows it well enough. Albion said that judging from his situation, someone might think that Dassey's family forced a woman to disguise herself as a man and join the order. Only their people know about Eris being cursed. But to the rest of them, it will sound like just another excuse, and this theory could completely destroy Theseus's family. At this moment, the girl thought that this was not a theory, but a reality. Albion said that judging from his situation, someone might think that Dassey's family forced a woman to disguise herself as a man and join the order. In their ranks there must surely be knights from families who are political enemies of House Theseus. So he told Eris to be careful. Turning around, he said they'd think about it later. For now I should get some rest. As the guy pulled away from her, she wondered if Albion had known from the beginning that she was a woman. After all that happened, the girl galloped home. When she walked into the manor, she was greeted by a guy and told that he was happy to see Ariel. It was her half-brother, Clement Theseus. The girl mumbled awkwardly and said she was back. When she was 16, being in the capital of the Tessay estate was much more than she had realized. And Clement, when he saw her reaction, couldn't stop laughing. She didn't know what aristocracy was all about. Only later did she realize the authority that the Theseus family held. There was one thing her teacher always said. Robots contributed to the suppression of the rebellion against the king, which earned him the title of Marquis. But he was not from around here, and had many enemies. In other words, he was an excellent aide to the king, but an eyesore to the rest of the aristocrats. When Ariel went about her business and the one with the water brother asked if she had any problems during the expedition, the girl said of course not, and she didn't even have a scratch. Clement said let her know if anything happens because her problem is his problem too. The girl said that of course she would tell him at once, and the guy replied that he trusted her as much as she trusted him. Ariel thought she trusted him, trusted that he would immediately start following her if he suspected anything. She thought it would be better to find out for herself than to ask her. Clement told her to rest, because she must be very tired. When the girl wanted to go into the room, she was met by the maid and addressed. Isn't she going to lie on the bed all dusty? It was the flashy maid of the manor. Her name was Sally. She told the girl to go to the bathroom now. Sally said she wouldn't forgive her if there was one speck of dust on the bed. Ariel was very upset and ran up to the maid to hug her. Sally told her not to hug her in her dirty clothes, but the girl said something bad happened today. After that, they went to the bathroom, and Ariel told the whole story. After you soaked in the flower tonic, you lost your medicine, and the other knights found out you were a woman, Sally asked her. Gee, you can lose something without some kind of curse. Can't you get a new cure? She asked. Ariel said that even if she drinks it, it won't completely turn her into a man. And what would happen if they undressed her to be sure? The maid said they were already stupid enough to believe her just because of one voice. Ariel said that she has people there that she hates. Sally replied that then let her kill them. Ariel said it was very good advice, and thanked her for it. She thought they were the words of a true friend from her hometown. Sally said you can't do much anyway if you've been found out. She said that if things got too bad, she could have the girl call her, and they could help each other earn a living. Ariel asked how they would find the funds when that day came. Sally said that first she would go to the shop that had sold her the rotten fish when she knew she was from the village. Ariel said that she must have had her own difficulties. The maid said that she would do the laundry and let the girl wash up. And when the maid left, Ariel lay deeper in the bathroom and thought how good it felt to finally wash herself. Sally suggested Arieli leave the place. She had no intention of leaving the Castra. She remembered Albion's words and thought that she had nowhere to go back to because the village she came from was a lifeless place, and an unseen disease had caught up with her twice. The disease killed first the livestock and then the people, which was even worse. After the head of the village died, no one wanted to take over the post. Ariel didn't have time to discern what was edible and what wasn't. She had to eat everything to survive. Ariel was destined to live the rest of her life like cattle, but she was given a choice of 2 chances. The first is when she met Edward Knight at 13, and the second is when she met Clement Theseus at 18. The moment she heard Clement's offer to bring back a precious memory from when she was 13 years old was forever etched in her mind, and here it was again. She then thanked him for saving her, but she had nothing to thank him with. The knight said he didn't need money. The guy said that a knight's duty is to rescue and protect those in need. They become stronger because of it. At that moment, Ariel thought he was so cool, and she was grateful that he was there for her. The knight's day off passed unnoticed, and the order returned to its usual routine. At least that's what the girl thought. When she was practicing, all eyes were fixed on her person. Everyone was whispering and saying that she was training in a woman's body. They knew it was very hard to do when you were a woman. But then suddenly Ariel couldn't stand it all and started to leave when Ilan asked where she was going. She replied that she was going to sharpen her sword. When she walked in, she saw Albion and asked what he was doing there. The guy explained that he was checking their weapons stockpile. He then asked if Ariel had notified his entire family of the situation. Ariel said of course, and asked how he had reported to his superiors yesterday. Albion said they were quite sarcastic, criticizing them for failing to catch one unfortunate witch, even though they had a chance to boost the reputation of the royal vine. Ariel was surprised, because they had caught so many werewolves. Well, the guy said, even the village hunters could do it. Albion said that if they killed the witch, the bosses would get support from the common people. Ariel said she didn't know what they were up to there, but their business couldn't wait until after she served. After a little thought, Albion said things wouldn't go well without her. When the girl heard this, she was surprised and thought Albion had finally realized her worth. Eris asked Albion what it was he had just said, and it looked like he had just heard something forbidden. Ariel asked without whom it was, things wouldn't go well here, and asked if he could say it again and not be embarrassed. Albion said he merely meant that it would be a shame if they lost a good swordsman like him. Eris said that he knew the man wanted him with him, and because he didn't want him to go back to his hometown after all. But Albion said his opinion is final and he won't change it. Before he left, he said that if that was the end of it, he needed to get back to practicing. Ariel thought, little will she tie him up and make him say thank you for joining our order. You will always remain the most important member of the royal vine. No matter what, Ariel owes it to Albion to hear those words in person. After that, she went out to where everyone was practicing and asked who wanted to fight her. When no one answered her, she screamed even harder. Dex went up to Albion and asked what was wrong with Eris today. He replied that he didn't know, but then suddenly one of the knights started to croak and imitate her words, purposely making a squeaky voice. Ariel was very angry at those words. She jumped off the balcony and asked William, "So, are you my opponent for today?" The boy said in a trembling voice that no, he wasn't going to fight her. Then Eris asked, "Were you really scared?" William said that of course he wasn't scared. It was just that they were good for a man to be a woman. When Eris asked what he meant, the guy explained that he was now in female form, and he couldn't fight him in that form. Ariel asked what he was talking about since he'd seen her practicing. William said he'd seen everything, and he was afraid he couldn't even hold a sword. Afterward, he turned to his friends and asked them what he was not telling the truth. His partner said he was right, and his shoulders had gotten a lot broader since he'd turned into a woman. The guy replied that he had always been petite, but it felt like Eris was now halved in size. Ariel thought at that moment that it was all their damn bias. She asked if it made any difference whether he was a man or a woman. The bottom line was the same. Albion watched this performance. William said he wouldn't fight her because she would cry afterward in her squeaky voice. Ariel told him to be responsible for himself. His voice wasn't any better. William said Eris's body may have apologized, but the nasty character went nowhere. At this point, the girl thought that it would be very easy for her to knock this idiot out. But should she do it? What would she get out of it? Ilan came over and asked what they had going on. When he got closer, he asked William, "Is he really bothering Eris again?" At that moment, Ariel thought she had Ilan. And then she asked the boy if he trusted her. Ilan said of course he trusted, and asked why he was asking that. And at that moment, the girl stood up with her sword to start the fight. The friend had no choice but to fight her. This position announces that the sparring has begun. Ariel knew that Ilan would treat her as an equal, and then she started this fight. The boy threw back his weapon and said that he believed Eris wouldn't hurt him, but it was too late to retreat, so Ariel pounced on her friend. Ilan asked her why the sky was suddenly spinning. Albion approached them and asked how he could strike someone who had let his guard down. At that moment, the girl thought she'd better ask Albion to practice with her. After all that had happened, Albion and Eris carried Ilan to the temple for treatment. Ariel's mouth was rewound. The girl said he could go himself. Then Albion said he shouldn't talk right now. She remembered that she had a woman's voice, so she fell silent. Then he whispered that it had been a long time since they had a chance to go to the temple to control their powers, and they were constantly in trouble due to excessive competition. Eris laughed and said he remembered managing to send one man to the temple every day. But Albion said that was nothing to be proud of. Then she asked, he had also damaged himself repeatedly, hadn't he? Of course, he was bigger than many of his peers, and didn't know how to use his strength properly. That was why he seemed clumsy in the eyes of those smaller than him. He explained that you can't win a battle with your physique alone, and said that Eris knows that very well. The girl said she didn't know whether to be embarrassed or offended. He was quiet for a moment, and afterward he said it was a compliment. Eris questioned what he had said, because he had spoken so quietly that he hadn't heard. At that moment, they looked at each other, and couldn't take their eyes off each other. Ariel didn't understand what was happening or why her heart was beating so fast. They were suddenly interrupted by Ilan's voice, who turned to Eris and said that he felt like he had been to the other world. The girl said that soon he would see God too. The boy was surprised and said that he had not done enough good deeds. Eris said it was okay and he would be on his side. He would tell God what a good man he really was. But then suddenly, Albion told Eris to be quiet, because they were already near the temple. When they arrived, they immediately called for the healer. He began to cast a spell on something. After that, he took the ointment and applied it to the spot where he had been hit. Ilan wanted to say that it hurt, but realized that the pain was already gone. Then the healer told him not to move until the ointment was absorbed. He said what a lovely young man, but his body was a mess and asked how someone could have mutilated him. Then Albion said that one bear was in training. But the girl immediately stepped on his foot and asked which bear. But the guy didn't notice her and said Ilan was fighting an opponent who had strength like a real bear. When the healer asked if they themselves had anything serious, but Albion replied that they were perfectly fine. Catherine was at this point giving the guy silent hints about telling him about her curse. But he didn't understand anything, so the girl shoved him back. He whispered, "You ask what she's doing?" Ariel couldn't understand if he didn't get it. Then she whispered in his ear to ask the healer about her curse. Albion agreed, but told him not to touch him again without permission. Ariel was surprised and thought that it wasn't like she and he were so close that he was asking her not to touch him. Then the boy coughed and said he'd like to ask the healer something about the witch's curse. When the healer asked which witch they were talking about, Albion explained that one of their men had met a witch and passed out. "If this person has been sent a curse, is it possible to get rid of it?" he asked. Then the healer asked if the man had tried to make a deal with the witch. He was surprised and said that of course not. He was completely innocent. Then she turned to the knight and said that she respected his confidences, but he was obliged to think with a cool head as a knight of the royal family. Innocent people would never get close to a witch for nothing. Ariel didn't know what the old man was talking about. The healer said that if he was sure, he should rather bring this man here, and they would heal him according to God's will. They will check if he has sins or a curse, and bring his mental state back to normal. Ariel thought there was no way she could do that because they would put her in a dungeon under the temple, give her only stale bread and make her learn prayers. When she wanted to say something, Albion immediately grabbed her hand and thanked the healer for his advice, and said that they would keep an eye on the injured man, and also think about his suggestion. The healer said to let them do as they please. The temple was always open. He didn't even know that the Knights of the Royal Vine did such noble deeds. Then he said, "May their path be blessed by God." Albion thanked and smiled politely. When they went home, Eris asked her friend if he was all right. Ilan replied that he was fine, though the temple treatment was expensive, but effective. Eris asked why it had to be effective if it was so expensive. Ilan then said that even though he was in a woman's body, he was still strong. Eris replied that of course he was the same as before, and didn't understand why William had provoked him in the first place. Albion said that provocation is also a skill, and if Aristide had hit William, he would have easily moved on to a political discussion, though he's sure the Marquis Theseus wouldn't let that happen. Eris said that Marquis scares him, so let him not talk about him anymore. The Marquis Theseus is Ariel's foster father. She doesn't see him much, so Clement is in charge of her now. Not that she's complaining, but she doesn't want to see him under any circumstances at all. She wondered if things got that scary when they were in front of politics. Ilan said he was right and saw Marquis once. He did look super scary. His dad says he's sharp as a blade. Albion said that was right, and if his adopted son made trouble, he would easily sacrifice him. Eris said Albion was right when his friend tried to defend him. Ariel could not deny it because she is just a pawn to protect his son. Albion said it's not too late to ask the Marquis to replace him in the order with some relative of theirs. He could go home and say he couldn't get used to city life. Eris got angry and asked who else couldn't get used to it already. Then the guy said that the problem is all about him. He wants to solve everything through his fists. Ariel asked, "What's wrong with that? Does he really want to start lecturing him here on what he should do as a knight and what not to do?" Albion said the Royal Vine is a carefully planned political system. It has too many weaknesses to last even 3 years in it. Ilan said he could be so naive sometimes. Eris got angry and asked if he thought so too. But Ilan said that was why they needed knights like him. Some will take advantage of him, and some will change for the better after meeting him, Ariel said, just like him. The boy confirmed it in a cheerful voice, said he was embarrassing him. But Ilan asked why, because it was true. But then suddenly Albion split them up and told the guy to stop saying all sorts of smarmy words in public. Or better yet, not at all. Ilan told him to stop being jealous. At that moment they stopped and looked at each other, but then suddenly another guy ran up to them. It was Luthen. He said that Prince Khalsa was at their headquarters. Albion was shocked and asked, "Is this a joke? How could Prince Khalsa be at their headquarters?" Luthen said that as soon as he arrived, he immediately asked who was in charge. Albion asked if he knew the reason for his visit. The guy replied that he seemed to be saying that he had missed something in the report. Everyone was very surprised to hear that Albion had made a mistake, but the man replied that he didn't think so. He said he'd better hurry back first to figure things out. At this time, the second prince, Cal Strandian, gathered all the knights who were there and said, "Here comes the commander at last." Albion turned to His Highness and said that if they had known he was coming, they would have prepared everything for the actual reception. He said they were ignorant, had never held a banquet in his honor, and asked what they had to offer now. But without waiting for an answer, he said he had no need of hospitality now. Unlike the first prince, the second prince, Cal Strandion, being a 30-year-old man, he enjoys even the very thought of bare-knuckle combat. His only plus is his lack of political ambitions, but there are more minuses. He's an impulsive moron who loves to fight. That's his biggest and most dangerous disadvantage. When the prince took a swing at Albion, he didn't even twitch, just stood still as if nothing had happened. Then the prince said he could safely dodge now, and asked if he trusted him. Albion replied that even if he had deviated, the outcome would have depended on his decision. Cal said, "Does he mean to say that he made a mistake?" After that, lay the weapon back down. He said he was giving him 30 points out of 100 for his answer. At that moment, Darily thought it was a good thing Albion had a broad back, because she almost attacked the prince. At that point, Cal said he arrived on this day because he knows Albion missed something important in his report. The Royal Vine is the domain of the royal family, so the guy has to report absolutely everything as the head of the order. Albion said he didn't know what the guy was talking about. The prince said he didn't think so, and asked that the knight who had been wounded by the witch be brought to him. Ariel didn't understand how he knew about it. Then Albion told the prince that he didn't know what he was talking about, because there are no knights who have been injured among them. He's obviously disappointed with the results of the last mission, but Albion said he gives his word that they won't let him down next time. Then the prince said that in 2 days his little sister Evangeline would be celebrating her 16th birthday, and he wants all the knights of the order to participate in an entertaining tournament, if they fail, or try to hide the wounded man. Then he turned to Albion and said he would turn him into his personal plaything for his own amusement. Albion looked at the prince and said they would love to participate. Cals then said that he would look forward to seeing them, and began to walk away to his wagon. As the carriage drove away, the cowardly knight Leuton exhaled a sigh of relief. When Ilan saw his partner breathing heavily, he asked if he was all right. The guy explained that as soon as he arrived, he demanded that Albion be brought in immediately, and he was so scared. But Ilan said that he came out of the situation just fine. He knows what it's like to face a prince alone. Leuton said it's even amazing how Albion meets him one-on-one every time. The guy replied that it's his job, and he's not that bad as long as you're honest with him. When the guy heard that, he looked nervously towards Ariel, and after that he said that he had to go now. As he ran off, the girl wondered why it was that he looked at her like that when the conversation turned to the wounded man. At this point, Ilan turned to Albion and said that this tournament was more like a prince's whim than his little sister's. Albion nodded and said that it was like that because the prince wanted to take part in it himself. When Ariel heard that, she asked if that meant they could legally tear it down with one left. Albion asked if he also wanted to die legally. Eris replied that he didn't, and he just hadn't thought about it. After that, they went to the castle. Albion said that it was worth making an excuse for him not to take part in the tournament, because Eris would definitely not be able to hide his voice. Eris replied that he could beat someone who told the prince about him with impunity, and how could such a thing even be missed? Ilan was surprised and asked if someone had told on him. Eris said why else would a prince invite them to this tournament? Besides, if his voice could easily give him away, he could just keep quiet. Albion said something was amiss, but Ariel answered him to wait and see her win this tournament without saying a word. That's what she said, but her plan was that Ariel was going to pretend she had a cold. 2 days later, the day of the tournament arrived. Princess Evangeline's birthday celebration is held near the fountain in the palace garden. It is usually open to display expensive art to showcase the royal family's influence, but on that day, the place is surrounded by guards, and entry is strictly regulated. Since the main entrance to the palace is for special guests, Ariel will have to go through the back door. But when the girl arrived, she saw many people shouting, "Hey, my flowers are about to wilt! Let me in! And I brought extra eggs on order!" All these people were standing in line to enter the castle through the back door. The girl didn't expect to see so many people. Ariel thought she was very lucky that the knights could get in and out without a line. Otherwise, she'd be in a lot of trouble. As she ran past the priest, she overheard a conversation. "Has the soil been blessed before? How did you plant the seeds of the fruit from which this wine was made?" The vendor didn't know what to answer him. Ariel was shocked that they were so serious about asking such useless questions, and now it made sense to her why so many people did. "You said the fruit was picked in the mountains, which isn't exactly safe because of the possibility that it could have been grown by a witch," said the priest to the seller. When the priest told him to leave, and then all the people started yelling at him, saying that they were all in a hurry, and for him to leave quickly. At this moment, he thought that his mistress had told him to deliver the goods to the palace no matter what. Suddenly Ariel came up to him and asked him to stop. In a whisper, she said that he was one of the knights of today's celebration. He realizes it's all so sudden, but he can help. If the seller wants, he'll take it as a gift to the princess personally. When Ariel finally arrived at the knights, Ilan asked what took him so long. Eris said he was busy with something and asked if they had already made a plan of action for today. Ilan said that's what Albion was doing right now, and they were just waiting. When he saw the box, he asked what it was that he was carrying. Eris said it was his personal way of avoiding unnecessary conversations with Prince Kals. Ariel said before they started, "Let them tell her what's what," and smiled. The Order of the Royal Vine usually plays an important role in high-level events. In other words, they are like luxurious and expensive jewelry. But it seems that this time Prince Kals has come up with a much funnier way to use these ornaments. In this tournament, participants must fight with a blunt sword in one hand, their colors in the other. The participants fight until the song of the opera singer ends, and the winners are those who have the most petals left in their bouquet. And the grand winner will be honored to personally present Princess Evangeline with her bouquet of flowers. Albion said he would be the judge. Ariel wondered how he had gotten away with it. Luyten whispered that he thought they were just trying to make buffoons out of them. Ariel, to be honest, seems kind of childish too. But what can you do? Orders are orders. And like most games, everyone quickly got used to it. Although in the beginning they called it childish and frivolous fun. Ariel was very focused during the fight, but as expected, she was able to win. When the pretty Princess Evangeline Strandian saw this, she laughed her bright laughter. After that fight, Ilan met Eris and congratulated him on making it to the semifinals. Toot thanked him and asked if his friend had been drinking. Ilan said, "Just a little." Ariel thought he was too cheerful for someone who'd chosen back in the beginning. Afterward, she said it was obvious she was going to win. They could have just given the reward and gotten it over with. Ilan asked if he was fed up with fighting. Ariel said it was hard to call it a battle, especially when her portion was always tiny before. Regardless of the prey, she had to take food from adults much taller and stronger than her. Ilan said he was just a beast, then asked if there was anything interesting to tell him. When the girl agreed, the guy pointed to the side and told her to look over there because Kendrick was here. When Ariel saw him, she thought she would rather meet a bear than him. Knight of the Silver Spike, an order that was founded by the Great Temple, and the strongest man of Castra. All this is said about the artificial swordsman Kendrick Logan. Suddenly Ilan called out to this guy and asked him to come over to them. When the boy approached, he asked him what he needed. Ilan said that he didn't expect to meet a Silver Spike knight here. Kendrick explained that he had come today as a regular visitor. Ariel thought at that moment that made sense, because he was human too. After that, he turned to Eris and said that he came here because he thought there would be a chance to fight him in the tournament. But he didn't think there would be a circus show here. Ilan said it's not like they can't spill blood at the princess's birthday celebration. When Ariel didn't say anything back, Kendrick asked why it was Ilan who wouldn't let him say a word to Eris. At this point, the girl thought it was finally time for her plan. She approached the guy. The girl opened her mouth, but at that moment a great many butterflies swooped in. Kendrick didn't realize what was happening. Ariel had a berry in her hands. Ilan walked over to the girl and covered her mouth, telling her that it was a fruit that attracted bugs, butterflies, and birds as soon as it was cut open. And birds especially like to throw them around. The best place to eat them is indoors, but Eris must have forgotten that. Ariel had used these berries as bait when she hunted birds of prey back in her homeland. She never thought she'd see them here. Kendrick said it was too stupid, and he hoped they wouldn't meet again at such absurd events. After that, he turned around and started walking away. Eris asked then, wondering when he would have already toned down his dislike for him. Ilan replied that maybe he was still upset about losing to him in last year's tournament. The girl said that she understood, because it was the first defeat in her life. I thought to myself that I would hardly have won under normal circumstances last year. It only worked out because the first person to beat the opponent's helmet was named the winner. Then she asked if he would stop it if she let him win once in a duel with him. But then suddenly Albion came up to her and said that he must not lose, pulling her by the ear. Asked if his mind was only smart enough to come up with the idea that he couldn't talk because he ate something wrong. Eris, rubbing her ear, said that even the princess had witnessed it. Albion asked what he had just said. Then he turned to Ilan and asked what Eris had done this time. Albion sat him down and said they drank the wine that belonged first as a gift to the princess to see if it was safe. But now Eris says that this wine was made from gooseberries. Eris said that at first he planned to say that he had a sore throat due to a cold, and then he happened to see these interesting berries. Albion, hearing this, said that he must consult him about his plans from now on. Eris said that luckily the princess turned out to be a really nice person. Ilan agreed, and said that they had talked for so long. He said they didn't mention Eris, but they managed to discuss the topic of curses. Speaking of curses, aren't they usually lifted with a kiss? He asked. Albion asked the girl how much he had drunk in general. Eris replied that the princess had been very generous with their wine. Ilan interrupted and asked, "Can't you see he means what he says?" He ran up to Eris and said if it would help break the curse, and he came closer and closer to her. Ariel thought at that moment that his lips were too close and they were about to touch. But at that moment, when the guy wanted to kiss, someone's hand appeared between their lips. It was Albion. He told the guy not to even think about it and looked at him angrily. Ilan replied that he was just kidding and wasn't going to kiss, of course. Albion told the guy to never joke like that again. It's extremely disrespectful to Eris. After thinking about it, Ilan turned to Eris and apologized, saying that he had gone a little overboard. Ariel at this point thought, and how can she be mad when a guy makes that face? So she said it was okay, even though it wasn't funny at all. Ilan asked, what if a kiss really does help? Eris said that only happens in novels. Ilan said that there was a witch in them too. When Eris asked if he was trying to use logic to prove he was right. But then suddenly Albion said that the semi-finals were about to begin. As expected, Ariel won. When she finished the fight, the referee announced, the winner of the tournament is Aristide Theseus of the Royal Vine. They were told that he could bring his bouquet to Her Majesty. Then Ariel came and got down on one knee and gave the bouquet to the princess. The princess sniffed the bouquet and laughed, flirting a little with Eris. After the tournament, a sumptuous feast awaited at their headquarters. Everyone came back very hungry, so the food came in very handy. As Ariel was eating the meat, Albion came to the table and asked for everyone's attention. Suddenly voices were heard. Does he want to make a toast? Who gives toasts with such a serious look? Albion asked with a serious look who had told the prince about Aristides. Ariel was very surprised and even choked up when she heard that. She hadn't expected him to decide to ask that right now. Albion said that lately Prince Cals has been talking like he knows about the curse. He said he knows a witch hurt one of us, and this tournament was organized precisely to find out who this man was. The hall was very quiet. The warriors were in shock. Albion says that if he were a rat, he'd stab Eris on stage to make him scream, because there's no better way to prove that he was the one cursed by the witch. But that chance is already gone. He doesn't know which one of them is the informer, but now he says to let the one know that he has made him and Eris his enemies. Then suddenly Ilan rose from his seat and shouted that he too was with us. He too was on Eris's side and always had been. Then suddenly someone turned to William and asked, it was him. I mean, he can't stand Eris. It's only logical to assume it's him. The guy asked why he was on the list of suspects. Albion asked William if it was definitely not him. The boy asked if they were mocking him, if they could think of such a thing. He said it was true, that he didn't like him, but he didn't. Eris coughed and said he didn't like him wildly either, but he believed him. We'll let him remember that there is one step from love to hate and don't forget it, followed by a mighty laugh. After a while all the glasses had been emptied. Eris stood up and shouted that it was him, the one who had been cursed, and he was here. He wondered how they would find him, if they would start checking everyone en masse. Ilan asked what if on the next hunt he caught the witch's curse. Suddenly he can't go back to being a man. Eris, so he doesn't say anything stupid. Ilan asked why it was nonsense, he was being quite serious. Ilan said that if he could save his comrade's life, he would even give his first kiss. The guy sitting next to him asked what the kiss had to do with anything. Ilan explained that he had read in novels that if you kissed a person with a curse, you could get rid of it. He asked, what if it works? That's in our case. William heard all this and turned to Albion. He said that instead of suspecting each of them, how about sacrificing yourself and finding peace of mind? Albion asked what the other victim was. William then told him to close his eyes and kiss him. Ariel choked when she heard that, and thought it was a piece of not idiotic behavior. Could it be that he was angry about something that had happened recently? Then she told Albion to just ignore him. Albion set the mug of drink on the table and wondered if that was called donating. Then the guy put his hand on Ariel's cheek and started pulling closer and closer to her, without even realizing that she was actually a woman. Someone in the crowd shouted out that they were actually going to kiss, and everyone watched the process with attention. Ariel asked him, Albion, are you drunk? What are you doing? The guy moved even closer to her and said quite in what he was. But at that moment there was a knock on the door. Disappointed that the process had been interrupted, they asked who had come to see them so late. Albion moved away from the girl, coughed, and asked who was there. A voice was heard from behind the door. The 3rd detachment of the Royal Guard. Am I speaking to Mr. Albion now? And what brings you here? The guy asked. He was told that they had received a report of a woman screaming coming from their building. At first they assumed it was probably the maids, but that was impossible considering it was so late in the day. Ariel thought at this point that she didn't know who had gotten to her, but this person was clearly aiming. The guy on the other side of the door asked if they could open up so they could check things out. Albion said he couldn't do that, and explained that their headquarters was the private quarters of the Order of the Royal Vine, and they have no reason to open their doors to uninvited guests, especially considering the timing of their arrival. He said if they wanted to come in, let them provide a royal decree. Then suddenly Ilan crawled up to Ariel with a black cloth and told him to put this on just in case. At that moment, a rough voice was heard from behind the door. "By royal decree, do you mean me?" he asked. All the knights who were sitting in the hall immediately realized who it was. Albion asked if it was Prince Cal's. He said he forgot to reward the winner and asked if they would open that door now. He brought food. At this point he turned to Eris. He whispered that he would open that door as slowly as possible and let the other man think of something. At this point Ariel thought maybe she should pretend to be drunk and fall asleep. But Ilan told her to look over there. There was a vent. Albion at this moment slowly began to open the door. When the door opened, all the knights bowed to the prince. Cals told him to get the food first and waved for the guard to serve it. Albion took the box of food and invited the guests inside. The prince, when he came in, said that apparently they had enough to eat. After watching the entire room, he asked, "Where's their winner?" Ariel, who was sitting in the vent at this moment, thought, "God bless Ilan for his attentiveness." She thought that even if she could get out of this place, where would you have her run to? At that moment, she heard Albion's voice saying, "If you mean Aristide, Lord Clement Theseus has ordered him to go back to the manor." The prince asked, "And why is that?" The boy explained that he figured the reason had something to do with etiquette lessons. The prince sighed and said, "Clement Theseus is always so picky about everything." Albion said they could send their own congratulations, but Cals turned to his guards and said that they were now heading for Theseus's house. When everyone heard this, they were shocked, and Ariel, who was sitting in the vent, thought, "Is this some kind of joke?" After they left, the girl quickly got out of the vent and ran to the manor. She thought it wasn't fair. It's not like she's some dangerous criminal, but she has to run away and protect her reputation. After a while, Clement was in his office looking over some papers, very focused, and at that moment he heard a great rumble. When he turned around, he saw his window shattering and Ariel flying in. Stopping halfway through, the girl said, "Clement, Clement, me." The guy at this point put his quill on the table and said she must have some urgent business to attend to. He asked that the girl tell him what needed to be done and as soon as possible. He said she would explain in more detail later. After a while, a carriage with the prince pulled up to the estate. Clement came down and met them. He said, "Greetings, Prince Cals. At your service, Clement Theseus." The prince said he had come to congratulate the winner of the tournament, Mr. Aristide, and asked where he was. Clement thanked him for coming to congratulate him in person despite the late hour, but he sent him out for a run to get the excess alcohol out. Prince said he didn't seem confused by the late hour either, and he thought the guy should have been back by now, or maybe he was sleeping outside somewhere. Clement said he was sure the one was already lying around somewhere, and as Aristide's brother and guardian he would make sure it was sent to him tomorrow morning. The prince said that as far as he knew, he was in charge of the residence in question and all its buildings. The boy confirmed it. Cal said that then perhaps he could explain one very entertaining thing. There was a witness who saw a man in the uniform of the Order of the Royal Vine heading this way. "Clement, what is it? There really is a man, and he resides in this estate." The prince asked, "Does he mean to say that someone other than Sir Aristides has entered the manor in the uniform of the Royal Vine?" At that moment, Clement turned toward the stairs and motioned for Ariel to come up. The girl told her brother that she would be right up and started down the stairs. When the prince saw the girl coming down, he was surprised. A few minutes before, the maid had told Ariel to bend her shoulders. She said she needed to look petite. Ariel asked how she could do that. Her shoulders weren't used to it at all. The maid looked at the girl, saying that nothing was helping, and asked that she throw on this shawl. Ariel thought that was kind of completely silly. Not all women had to be small. While Sally was trying to put on the girl's makeup, Ariel said as if a little makeup would help Prince Calsa not recognize her. After a while the maid said it was done. She asked that she make her voice more feminine in what she was talking about. Sally said she never would have thought she would have to repeat her mother's words. Ariel said she never thought this day would ever come. The maid said that when the girl was going down the stairs, let her try not to trip over her dress. Well, of course, Ariel didn't succeed, and she accidentally stepped on the tip of her dress. After that, she tripped and started falling down the stairs. Clement immediately ran up to his sister and reached out his hand to grab her. But the girl was able to react at that moment and rolled over. When she landed, She thought she probably shouldn't have done that. The girl stood up quickly and peeled off her dress. Clement, coughing, said, "Allow me to introduce. This is Aristida's younger twin sister." He said her name was Ariel Theseus. He explained that this child had tried on her brother's clothes out of curiosity and apologized for her. Prince said he had never heard that there was a sister. He asked if they added her name to the regional registry. Clement said they had completed all the lawsuits in the county where Gemini's maternal grandfather, Baron Paradis, lived. He said that Aristide was gifted with strength, so he sent him to be knighted. But Ariel still has a lot to learn, so she's homeschooled. He explained that it was his fault for keeping Ariel locked up because he was completely focused on her brother. He bowed and said he would try to teach her everything quickly. The prince smiled and said that so-and-so would take it as a silly misunderstanding. At that moment, Ariel wondered what had gotten into him. Cal said that after all, she was supposed to go out into high society soon. He turned to the girl and said he would look forward to their next meeting. After that, they left. After standing for a long time, Ariel said she would go then. Clement called her name in an icy voice and told her to stop. He asked if she knew that Prince Cal's ran the royal vine. The girl replied that of course she knew. He said that if she knew what she had done then, a victorious renunciation of his right to the throne, he had turned into a mad monster. All he has in mind is to terrorize people in any way he can. It doesn't matter how. Ariel said she was sorry. Clement calmed down a little and told her to now tell everything in order and as it was. But just as she began to tell, it knocked. Then they heard a voice saying that it was Albion and Ilan of the royal vine. They apologized for such a late visit, but they have an important conversation that concerns Aristide. They had no choice but to let these guests in. When they entered, the maid had prepared tea and dessert to accompany it. "Allow me to formally introduce myself. I am the eldest son of House Pioneer Albion." Ilan said he would like to formally introduce himself as well. He gave his name and said he was the third son of Count Lumet's family. Clement said that he was glad to meet them. After that, Ilan looked at the girl and asked, "Isn't Eris home?" Albion said that they had come to discuss something important related to Eris. At this point, Ariel couldn't stand it and asked her friend, "Doesn't he recognize her?" Afterward, the guy took a closer look at her and said he was very cute. Ariel asked, "Does he really think she's cute because of that wig?" Ilan said he probably did, and he could fall in love that way. Clement turned to Albion and asked that they get to the point sooner rather than later. After a while summarizing, Clement said that Aristide had turned into a woman because of a witch's curse, and everyone in the order agreed to keep it a secret. But one unknown Merry Knight told the prince what had happened. He asked if he'd gotten it right. Albion replied that he had. Then the guy said that Aristide is like this now because they created a fictional sister named Ariel to fool the prince. Clement said he would cooperate fully with them, and if anyone found out that Aristide had turned into a woman, let them try to introduce him to the twin sisters, and be sure to let him know about it. He'd also like them to let everyone know that Aristide would be unable to visit the order for a while due to family reasons. Afterward, he told Albion that he had mentioned that there was someone in the order hostile to Aristide. But the boy replied that there wasn't, because this man is not hostile to him specifically. He hates the house of Theseus itself. Clement looked at him carefully and said he should keep his sentimental thoughts to himself. Ariel, who saw their tense atmosphere, thought it was kind of strange. But at this point, Ilan said to be sure that with their cooperation, they would do their best to protect Eris. Clement looked at them and thanked them for it. The next morning when the boys left, Ariel said she would go then. Clement turned to her and asked, "When did this happen?" He asked when they found out she was a woman. The girl asked what he was talking about in general. Clement said he wasn't sure about Sir Ilan, on the impression that Sir Albion had known for a long time that she was a woman. Ariel said Albion wasn't smart enough to understand. At least she thought so. And at that moment she remembered him coming close to her and wanting to kiss her. Ariel thought, thinking back on it, it should now be clear to her that Clement might be right. Do smart people understand such things just by talking? Then she asked, what exactly made him think that? Clement said it was all his male intuition. Ariel was very surprised to hear this, and said that she thought he had some proof about it. He replied that it didn't stop him from speculating, but since she thinks Sir Albion knows nothing, then he'll take her word for it. For now. For now, the important thing is to prepare her for a possible meeting with the prince. After these words he called for Sally, the maid, who came quickly to his request. Clement asked her to bring the books that were on the second shelf in the library. The girl said that she would bring everything right away. Ariel asked, why did he tell her to bring books out of the blue? Clement replied that he was better able to use his intelligence. He didn't need to teach her because she always used her power. But it looked like it was time for him to take over her training personally. Ariel asked what she needed to prepare for. Clement asked for what, and said for her debut in high society, naturally. She asked why so suddenly. She is a knight, after all. Clement said they couldn't have people gossiping about one twin being locked up and the other being allowed to join the order. At that moment a maid came into the room and said she had brought everything. Ariel walked over and picked up one of the books. When she read the title, she was very surprised. Basic Etiquette for Ladies. Clement said that while he would look for a good tutor, she had to learn the theory of being a lady, and she had only 3 days to do it. He asked if she could handle it. The girl replied enthusiastically that of course she could handle it. She could handle heavy tasks too. Afterward she came to Albion. He saw the girl and asked, "Are you here to talk?" Ariel said that and to ask about things she couldn't understand. Albion read the title of the book and asked what they knew about women's rules of etiquette. The girl told them to forget that they had previously thought one introduction, already incredibly strange, was correct. She said that usually people say the words to each other, "Greetings, I am so-and-so from so-and-so's house." But this book says they can't be the first to greet someone they don't know. They must wait until someone introduces them to that person. Also, they cannot attend events to which they have not been invited. Greeting everyone on the street is a sign of bad manners. Ariel said it's like a silly argument. Chicken and egg, which came first. And he said there's another problem. Usually, yes, they make their debut in high society by attending events that their mother's friends have organized. That's pretty hard to do without connections. Ariel, upon hearing this, said that Marquise Tessé passed away years ago, which means she has absolutely no connections.